This conference will now be recorded.
It's been my body.
Your life excitement. Okay, welcome to our budget retreat for April 24th, 2024. Turn the time over to Jason.
Thanks, Mayor. So I guess I'm just going to make a quick comment that doesn't have to do with necessarily any particular point on any one of these pages, but in the budget, we have put in there a planner, senior planner position in place of the zoning administrator. So we're not changing the number of full-time employees, but we'd like to beef up the capability of that position. And that we don't think that necessarily we're going to see any significant change, if any change at all, to the actual budget this year by doing this. But the salary range for a senior planner compared to a zoning administrator, which was what we used to have, is a little more expensive. It's about $15,000 more on the top end of the range. But you know, Dan was at the top of his range at about 81, 82, and we don't think that likely a new senior planner would come in at the top of that new range at 96. But I guess we'd like to go ahead and start advertising for that position because, as everyone knows, that department's pretty busy, and Melinda's kind of just running the show with one person. So I'm just curious about getting the council's feedback on that. Again, we don't think it would really change the budget this coming year. It just would be future years as that position moves towards the top of the range. It'd be a little more expensive, about 10 or 15, well, 15,000 more than.
Jason, where do we usually hire? At what range do we usually hire people in? About 80% or 85%?
That's a great question. I think it really ranges depending on the position. I think, Dean, you might be able to answer that better than I can.
Most of the time we try to do midpoint or below. So if the range is here, we try to, if they come with a lot of experience, season,
maybe a little higher,
probably midpoint. If they come with, no experience, it's probably closer to the beginning of the range.
Okay.
I know Melinda was talking to some of her counterparts in other cities that are currently hiring for planners, and it's like a lot of positions out there. They're just very competitive, trying to get talented people. So my guess is that we would come in at least mid-range, so probably in that low 80s, if not higher. But again, we were paying in the low 80s already, so if that's the case, it wouldn't really be a difference in this coming year's budget. But we just feel like we could get more bang for the buck if we had somebody that could. We've never had a true planner.
In the long run.
Yeah. Really, that extra 15,000 we feel like could do a lot of good for us in terms of just having a professional planner reviewing plans and giving us advice on codes and things like that.
Is that really something you think Kaysville needs? I mean, we don't see a lot of subdivisions coming through and stuff, so we don't seem to be extremely busy in the development side of things. So I'm just wondering if that's something you really think we need to have.
I do. I think you're right that we've seen a slow down here in permits recently, but I think as we see our CRA taking off in the coming years, especially redevelopment of downtown area, it'd be really good to have, and you'll always have redevelopment. I think in some ways it's like some of these redevelopments when you already have people really close to each other and you're redeveloping things or doing accessory dwellings or whatever, accessory structures. I mean, it just can be helpful in being careful not to. I mean, just thinking about Mr. Car Wash and how that was a redevelopment, and I think had we had a professional planner, we might have been able to avoid some of the issues there. So I think you'll always have, it'll always be a benefit to have a real planner in the city. And again, as we see the CRA taking off, this is an opportunity to make a real difference in what our downtown area looks like.
So this is a replacement for what we're losing.
The zoning administrator
So
position, right?
So that individual do this, still fill in and do that job as well? I mean,
Correct.
This is just an addition.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
It'd be a reclassification.
Reclassification, but they'll But will there be a need then to hire someone to do that job? Okay, I mean,
No,
so that's what
yeah.
I say, it's reclassification, I understand that, but
So
just the
then,
duty titles.
will he feel like he's too professional to have to do code enforcement?
I don't think so. I mean, everybody in this city kind of wears lots of hats, you know, and even Melinda is like, hey, I do code enforcement. So I think that's not unusual for a lot of cities and certainly not for our cities. So
And if you hire them, that's just part of the
Yeah, it's part of the
duty,
job.
Part of what we do.
job duties, you know.
As a
duties.
sign,
So do
yeah.
you sign up for?
What are they, right?
Hmm?
Yeah, I think you're right. Duties.
Whatever it is,
Um,
just like as a
So-
husband, I pick up trash.
Yeah, if you just feel like, well, if you had somebody that, you know, pay a little bit more, but just get that extra bang for the buck and getting that professionalism and that extra help,
I don't pick up
I feel like it'd be worth it.
And in talking to Melinda, you know, we talked about our code, you know, looking someone, having a consultant come. She really feels like this person could also do that.
Right.
Look through the codes, try to, you know, clean some of it up. It might take a little bit longer, but that's okay. We get more done.
That's what,
Yeah, I think it's worth it to cut out that, if we can, 200,000.
And because we have such limited project areas, I think it's really important to have someone come in that has got some, you know, professional, long-term planning experience, because that's kind of what we've lacked. And that's why we have a little bit of a hodgepodge.
well, yeah, we have an opportunity with, you know, whoever buys wingers, if we
Yeah.
have something in place
Mhm.
that says like, once you bought, that you have to do X, Y, Z to make 200 North be more symbiotic, that's the type of stuff, like, I mean,
Okay.
those are gonna happen. What's the other thing that's going on in the corner, the Jack in the Box?
Mhm.
All of that stuff could be, you know,
There's some key areas that we have left, so let's make the most of it.
And even with the routine stuff that we continue to get, you know, we'll continue to have planning and zoning meetings forever and having somebody that really understands codes and, you know, how to write staff reports and just has that extra level of education and professionalism, I think would be a real benefit to the city.
I think our community is expected actually for moving here. You know, we've gotten enough feedback on some of the projects that we have allowed that could maybe have been different had we had someone in this position. So.
Well, not that we've allowed, but the code allows.
Right, that's what I'm saying.
I'm okay with it.
That's good.
And I don't know if that's something it's actually a vote on, or,
You can't vote in this meeting.
okay, so I just,
It'll
you
be
know,
part of the compensation plan that you approve.
okay,
It's in June sometime.
okay, so just head nods.
So I think that's all we need for now,
Package.
yeah. And then, you know, we'll proceed with the process, but in this position wouldn't be filled in likely until after July 1, my guess is anyway, because time you recruit and they give their notice and all that stuff. So if we need to get it approved sooner for some reason, we'll come back for an actual maybe vote. But my guess is the budget would be timely for us. So great. Well, thank you. That's really all I wanted to bring up. So turn it over to Dean.
Okay. Well, thank you. The intent of today's meeting is to do a follow-up from our last budget retreat. Keep in mind that everything we've done up to this point is in preparation for the tentative budget. And the schedule has us adopting the tentative budget on May 16th. And at that point is when the budget really becomes available for the public to view and to look at, to make comments, to give the council feedback. So really, there's still a lot of time in this budget process. So all we've done, and we think it's been helpful to us, we hope it's been helpful to you to go through all these in preparation for the tentative budget. So we think after today, unless there's additional questions and information needed, we'll be in a pretty good spot to adopt the tentative budget in May. And then as the council sees fit, if they want to have additional meetings based on the tentative budget, we can evaluate those. And then we have scheduled a public hearing on June 6th and adoption of the final budgets on June 20th, or in the event of truth and taxation, we would adopt the final budget in August. So Today's schedule, there are a few things we want to bring to your attention. We want to look at some proposed fee schedule changes. We talked a little bit about this. We've had each department go through their fees and make recommendations for some changes. We want to follow up on the budget gaps we talked about last time and how we can maybe attempt to fill those gaps in the three areas of personnel, operations, and capital. And then we think it's important to have a little bit of a discussion on tax rate implications and what tax rates mean. And then ask you what the next steps are. And then we've also provided updated budget summaries. We probably won't spend a lot of time going through those. They're available for you to review. So let's look at the fee schedule changes. We have 3 slides on this. And so each department has reviewed their fees, and you can see the description and what the current rate is and what the proposed new rate is. Most of these are minor changes or an emphasis to look at it and say, what does this service really cost us to do? We ought to get pretty close to what the service costs the city, rather than pass those costs on to the current citizens. So I don't think we want to spend a lot of time just here for your information. These will be included as part of the consolidated fee schedule that you will adopt.
And Dean, these just cover our costs, right? This is not a money making or?
No, it's our best attempt to cover costs.
And I got it.
Probably don't.
Some do, some don't. Okay, but it's our best. Yeah. Okay, thank you.
So then we go on to administrative fees. We tried to clean up a few things here. Like, for example, video recordings. We really don't offer video recordings unless it's a legal issue, and we provide that at no charge. And then in the water system, we do have a temporary connection deposit for fire hydrants. And that's when a developer will come on hook to our fire hydrant, use it, and then return the meter. So that's just a deposit there. And then we get into some of the utilities. We did make a slight adjustment to Robinson Waste contract a few weeks ago as part of your council. And so there's some slight adjustments there. And then sewer utility, those are all pass-through costs from the Central Iowa Sewer District. And I think we talked about that a little bit.
33%, right?
Yeah, some pretty big increases there.
Shit.
And then the next slide is power system. We had some discussion last time about maybe changing the tier structure. So rather than, the first 1,000 kilowatt hours at one rate, maybe changing that a little bit. And so our recommendation is to increase the customer service charge $1 per month for residential, and then change the tier to the first 400 of what they're currently paying. So there wouldn't be anything more if you're under 400, and then a 5% increase in the rate. And we've tried to apply that uniformly across residential and commercial customers.
Is that 400 number just based on average
No.
usage, or what's it based on?
Average is about 900 kilowatt hours.
Okay.
But what it would do is those smaller homes, smaller usage. For example, I looked at my mom's usage, and she's about 400, 500 per month.
So when we looked at other cities, that 400 was pretty standard.
Yeah.
The first tier was about the first 400.
Oh, okay.
So that's where it came from. It's just comparing
So
to
why are you including a 5% increase in the rate also?
No, it's over the
5% for anything
500.
over 400.
So if you're at the 400 or below,
12 cents
Just for anything,
yeah, there's no
anything that's
increase.
Your
over
1 hour charge
400.
stays the same.
Yeah.
Or customer service charge has increased.
That's what I'm saying. You're already taking it from,
Right, but you only have to pay, you pay
overage.
the regular rate for the first 400, right? That we've been paying.
not anymore. You're gonna be paying it all, that you're gonna pay that much all the time.
No, it doesn't retro. It doesn't, once you go over 400, it doesn't retro back to kilowatt one, right?
The first block is at 9 cents, and then everything after that is.
What I'm saying is that because of the change in that, everybody's rate will go up.
Go up.
Why do we also have to include another 5% increase for summer rates? Everybody's rates are already going to go up. Why are we doing another
In what way,
5%?
Mike, in the?
Because instead of the 400, it's gonna start at 400 instead of 1,000. So everybody's rates are going up irregardless. Why do we also need to include a 5%er?
Are you saying that it should be 0.12303?
It shouldn't be, we should
We should say we should raise the
agree.
minimum.
We should do what we're doing and raise the minimum, which is pretty
To
standard
400, okay.
to the 400, but we don't need to also do the additional.
So you're saying
5%.
this should be 0.12303?
They're really two
Yes.
separate things. You're changing the.
Okay, okay, I see what you're saying.
Yes. So you're really doing two increases.
Well, if the average, or not the average, but average smaller home would be only 400, could you set it at 5-ish, 500, and then not penalize the majority of people that might really be impacted by it?
We think the smaller homes won't be impacted very much.
Okay,
And, we talk about why the rates are is
yeah, just
we
that's standard.
need the revenue.
Yeah, I get, I used to look at my rate usage, so.
And you will already be paying a lot more.
We already are, so, yeah.
And even with this revenue, this rate adjustment, we're still,
I'm not okay with both. I'm just saying, I'm not okay. I would not vote for that. I'll just say I will not. Let the other four can go ahead, but you're already doing a rate increase. We don't need to. It just,
I
it's,
see what you're saying, Mike.
It feels like a, even though the first, yeah, it's minimal. Yeah, I get that. I understand. where you're coming from.
okay. Next slide is, here's where we left off last time. We talked about the initial budget gaps for some of the major funds. We tried to simplify this, so we don't have all funds listed here. But these are the ones that we were most concerned about.
I'm sorry, Dean, I don't want to, but like to Mike's point on this, like I'd feel probably more comfortable, or it seems like maybe the right approach would be to eliminate the 5% increase on those after 400 for residential.
Up to 1,000.
Just to keep it, so like where it was the 0.0 on the winter, it was 0.10203. To keep, just to have that go across. Does that make sense?
It makes sense, but it's a significant piece of revenue.
Okay, maybe just let us know what the revenue is, but I'm thinking like, what about in the commercial side of things to keep it at the 5% increases? How much is that? Okay, so maybe we just need to see the amount of revenue that we're talking about.
Yeah, and we can go back and
Okay.
identify the.
But I guess what I was gonna say is I wondered, Mike, would you still be comfortable with all the commercials being raised to 5%?
I would be more open to something like that because they have the ability to raise their profit.
So let me understand this, so the additional kilowatt hours.
So I think what he's saying here, Dean, is just like, it's raising the rate by dropping this from the threshold from 1,000 to 400.
For that extra 600.
Yeah, instantly what's gonna happen is that's like, as soon as they go over 400, they would be, if we didn't do this, they'd be going up to this, so they'd be paying.
They only pay that from 400 and above.
I get it, yep, and that's what we're saying, but let's do a hypothetical, there's a home that does 1,000 kilowatt hours, right? Per month.
Okay.
And that home, right, currently would pay 0.0904 for that whole 1,000.
Correct.
Now what's gonna happen is after they go to 400,
It's another three, it's
They're gonna-
another 3.5 cents almost.
they're gonna jump to this, and so what Mike's saying is, why not just keep this
There.
the same
And not
here
do the 5% in.
and not increase that, because we're already raising it for that next 600.
Raising the rate significantly.
Does that makes, because you are gonna raise you're gonna raise quite a bit after that, after the 400, just by changing it there.
Does that get you to your number?
We can look at the.
But then keep these all the same from a business.
We can project out and see what, just doing the 400, what kind of revenue would that generate? And then we'll kind of see what.
Okay.
We meant to have those numbers today, but we weren't.
That's fair.
That's fair.
Well, we've had all the departments come and talk to us, but we've never ever actually had a discussion on the budget, really. I don't know that I feel like we haven't had we could talk as people were talking about things, but I think we've had a lot of presentations from a lot of departments, but do you guys feel like we've sat down and hashed out the budget yet? I don't.
Well, I
Well, I
think
think
we've
that's
been
what we're
receiving
doing.
information
Okay,
each
that's-
meeting per department, that's what we're doing.
And that's what I hope we're doing today.
Yeah, which I
Yeah.
feel like we've been
More
doing
hashing out.
during each meeting also.
A little bit of that.
Do you feel like we haven't been
Well,
doing
it-
that?
Is this,
Even though we were like,
I
okay,
guess to
take the 400,000 off, take the 200,000
your
off.
point, I do kind of agree with you. Like, we have been going through this and I have more of an understanding of what we're dealing with. But I don't feel like the ball's much closer to the end result where I feel like it needs to be, at least on my end.
Yeah.
So,
right, I mean, this is our best shot at, here's the balanced budget.
Yeah.
and,
Yeah.
What we're seeing today, after seeing all the,
Right.
here's the difference, what we're seeing today, and I haven't gone through it yet, is here's what we as a staff have gone to get it down, so it's as balanced as we think we can get it balanced.
Okay, sorry, I think everybody understands.
So here's the approach we took. With the budget gaps we saw, we think everything that the department heads included in their original budget is warranted. But the approach we took is we sat down with the departments and said, what can we defer? And most of these are deferred items.
Mhm.
What can we maybe use fund balance for, or savings for? And where's the gap? So we think by deferring even $1 million and using 800,000 fund balance, there still is a gap in the general fund.
So is there a chance that, when you look at sales tax and other stuff that's coming in, that that's maybe shrink that some? Because in the past, it seems to have a little bit. But what do you?
Yeah, we're watching that closely. That every indication on sales tax trends is pretty flat.
Okay.
Like we saw a couple years ago.
And we also said there's a few things that we didn't know. Did you include the carryover money into this? Because you guys talked earlier that there should be some carryover.
That would be fund balance.
And I thought the fund balance was based off the current budget and not what you're projecting that we would have returned back.
From FY '24.
Yes.
Yeah, I don't think there's gonna be much carryover.
I don't know what that means much. Sorry.
Okay.
But whatever carryover does come would go into the
It goes
fund
in the fund
balance.
balance for the next year.
Yeah.
And so I'm sorry. When you talk about $1 million deferred, I get nervous because we deferred a lot last year.
Mhm.
And I get concerned the more we defer, the more expensive it gets down the road. And I guess you're gonna talk to
We're
us
gonna talk about what those
about
deferred-
what we're deferring and.
This is our bluff statement, Barry.
Yeah, okay.
And I've stopped you 3 times now, so I very much
Oh, no,
appreciate
it's
it
okay.
though.
So road fund, about the same.
Thank you.
Using fund balance, we have done one thing, we moved the rail trail improvements from the general fund to the road fund. The reason being is part of the revenue source of the road fund is active transportation money. That's really what that was intended to do. So we think it's a proper place to account for it. It doesn't help the road fund much, but it's a good place to account for it. Water fund, still a gap. Power fund, 1.95 even after the rate changes, and stormwater fund.
But water and power and stormwater have their own general funds that this wouldn't come out of the regular general fund, it would come out of their
Their
funds.
They would enterprise fund, yeah.
Enterprise fund, yeah.
And you feel I mean, if I see a definition of risk in the dictionary, I think of Dean. So when it comes to monetary risk. And so you feel comfortable with the fund balances to be able to do this. You're gonna be able to sleep at night?
Power fund makes me nervous.
Oh, okay.
Me too.
Kind of using that kind of fund balance, but with us already raising rates, I don't, I think you may have to
Yes, so,
raise rates again in 6 months, 9 months.
The road fund, that's gonna eat up pretty much all of the road fund
Yeah.
balance.
because that's pretty hefty.
Yeah, I mean, we have 200 North being over $2 million and Mutton Hollow $3 million. I mean, it's eating up the road fund play.
If we do my brother.
So it'll be the lower part of Mutton Hollow.
That low, not
It'd be
that
across,
steep.
it'd be the
Mutton Hole.
Gotta do something.
Mutton Hollow and Fairfield.
Sorry. Okay,
Okay, so.
so we're done.
Not quite. So the first thing we looked at was operations. Are there things that we can maybe defer? Maybe make some reductions. And this is where we sat down with each department. And you can see the major reductions that have been made. Information systems, we're deferring some of our security and file storage plans. Land use code update. We're suggesting maybe wait on that. Fire department. We looked at their line items and made some reductions there. Same with public works. Same with police. And same with parks.
Salt for snow plowing is a big deal.
Do
So
what?
do we just
So
have enough
expensive.
reserves? I mean, we have to
No.
have salt for snow plows.
And it may be one of those issues where they don't salt as often. Those are the kind of decisions departments are gonna have to make.
Remember when Mika canceled snow plowing? I remember when that happened. I lived it.
Well,
It was not
and
good.
here's another one that concerns me on parks. You know, most of that increase was due to fertilizing. And fertilizer cost has gone up
Mhm.
crazy. And so the decision may be, instead of fertilize 3 times a year, you do it 2 times a year. And, you know, the first year or two, you won't notice, but they catch up with you.
One thing I have a problem with is the sidewalk maintenance. We have such poor sidewalks on the east side of town here. And I feel like the city is way behind the curve on their sidewalk maintenance anyway.
And so really, what does 5,000 mean? Because 5,000 is nothing.
It costs like 3,500 just to do one of those little yellow
So,
fractiony things.
yeah, so what does that really mean?
Yeah, is that
That was just the.
grinding down sidewalks or replacement?
That could be nothing. I mean,
I think that was the increase he requested.
Oh,
We
so he
backed
just
off.
took it
So
back
his
down to the
original
regular.
budget is still
Yeah.
So
there.
that is-
Yeah, most of these are,
This is what we did.
Increase it and then put it back to where it was.
Yeah.
Okay.
in most cases, that's what we.
It's not like his budget was $5,000 and now we're
Right,
cutting the
now
whole
it's
budget.
zero.
It's still
Yeah.
a sidewalk budget.
So I guess the salt, do we have enough salt in storage that we're probably
Maybe,
okay?
maybe unless we get a crazy winter.
Oh my gosh, okay.
So on the EMS supplies, does that include the Lucas device? Or is that still in the budget?
That's that's
Oh,
the
okay,
next one.
sorry.
So this is operations, about 472,000. What the approach we took was sat down with departments and said, we're gonna try to hold to your current budget level. So most of the things you see here, they were requests for increases over their current level. If that makes sense.
Okay, yes.
Okay, then we went to capital. And if you go through the list here, in black is ones that we deferred or eliminated.
Ooh.
Anything in red, we think fund balance may be appropriate use. And again, using fund balance for capital items and not operational items. So the cremation garden would be a deferral.
What's he gonna do there? Was that just leave it for a year?
Just wait, yeah.
Just wait.
I guess, I mean, as long as it looks okay.
It's just dirt right now, right?
Is the angel in the cremation garden, or is it?
It's across
next
the
to the
road.
Yeah.
I was under the impression they were gonna put in the curbing, like the sidewalk for the garden and do all that, but they're taking that all out and not doing anything.
You can see the ambulance lease purchase that we had. We think the payments won't start until fiscal year '26. The Lucas devices you mentioned, we've reduced those. And then we recently got information that the new fire truck that we ordered and paid for is actually coming sooner. So we need to equip that piece of equipment sooner rather than later.
Okay.
And then, again, what you see in red is use of fund balance. I think the one that gives me the most concern is probably the Angel Street Soccer Complex playground. I mean, we're using fund balance, but I think we need to be pretty regular on how we replace our playgrounds rather than relying on fund balance to do it. It ought to be part of our normal. This is our best attempt to try to shrink the gap.
So all the black is
The black is not gonna happen.
deferred. I mean, that's a,
And the red is fun.
The red will happen, but we're gonna use fund balance to pay for it.
so the increase, the outfitting the new fire truck though, how do you put that off?
No, they
We
didn't.
don't.
It's
That's
just,
the
it's a plus, though. You
Yeah,
can see how it's like, it's,
Yeah, it's in parentheses, so
It's actually an increase.
it's an increase.
Okay, sorry. But, okay, but, yeah. So, but an increase for when? Because the black we're deferring, so the 130,000 for that.
In that line, the black, in that case, it doesn't, we're not deferring that. These are just the changes. So all the positive numbers are reductions to the budget. We're not doing those. That
Oh,
that
okay.
130
So we still have to,
was
so
the-
you're just saying, yeah, so we still have to figure, that's still in
That's
there,
part of
but
the
it's
budget.
over what we have, but
What
we're
we
not
have.
using fund balance for
What
it.
we last year.
It's in the budget.
Oh,
It's in the budget.
okay.
So
Was
took
it,
out
was
the
it,
top
was it in
three
the
and added
budget?
that
But it
one.
wasn't in the budget a couple of weeks ago, now it is.
So
Okay,
that
thank
was
you.
one of our adjustments that we made.
Yeah, see,
So
I'm used to
we put
counting being
some-
plus or minus and you're throwing a multiplication in there.
Yeah, the minus means plus in this case.
Okay, like two negatives.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm sorry. So
Okay.
I can, most of those were actually ones that I had highlighted, except for the cremation guard, I agree with, so. Okay. If we didn't use fund balance for the playground, what would we use? Because I see, I understand what you're saying with that.
It's a $300,000 cost, so it increase our gap by 300,000.
So that would come out of a tax increase.
So you're saying that in general, we should
Okay.
factor into our tax revenue, like a certain amount every year for playground maintenance?
Traditionally, that's what we've done.
Okay.
Any questions on that?
Well, I talked to Chief about the Lucas devices, and he said they're out in 4 years, and they usually last 5 or 6. So even though we're putting it off, it's gonna come back soonish, I think, right?
Yeah, he indicated to us that, well, I can not do this year, but I can do it next year.
Yeah.
That's what he told us.
And that's what we need to know is, and I'm also curious about, because I didn't put a chart together, what we've deferred for the last couple of years. That we just keep kicking down the road, like you said, because that just adds up and gets more expensive. And I can see the big picture stuff. I know we've talked about the cemetery for a couple of years. We've talked about personnel increases for the last 3 years. I think we've said,
Yeah, the big ones we
Higher.
deferred have been personnel
Yeah.
requests.
and that's been a couple of years, you know, deferring, which makes it hard, so, okay.
Okay, and then the last piece is that personnel, we took the 4% citywide market adjustment and reduced it to 3.5%. Not a huge savings there, but
What are we putting the merit at still? According to this budget,
sorry.
merit,
Yes, that would include
that
merit still.
includes merit.
No, because merit's still 3,
I
right?
was gonna say, I thought it was 3 now, so it was 4 plus 3.
Yeah.
So the
So it's
3% merit is still included in this budget? Okay.
Are we gonna talk about that?
Yeah, let's talk about that.
Is now the appropriate time?
Sure.
And I really struggle with basically a 6.5% increase. Even if you're not gonna find me a company out there, including the federal government, who's gonna do that. In the federal government, you get a COLA, and it rarely ever matches what inflation is. And you never get merit. It just doesn't happen. In most industries, you don't get both. You get one or the other. And,
Or nothing. Yeah.
well, I mean,
And then
if anything, or
yeah.
one or the other. And so I start, because that, as Mike looked, that's the gift that keeps on giving. It's our most important resource, and I understand all that. But it's a heck of a lot.
It's a heck of a lot. I guess I just look at the last couple of years though, where they continue to ask for these increases because, our city population might not be growing necessarily in a huge way, but our expectations are growing. And so I think that we are asking people to do more than they have been hired to do, which is great. You work for a city, you put on multiple hats, you understand that. But at some point, there's gotta be some sort of balance to that, I think. When you know that you're doing the job of 3 people, and yes, it's your choice, you're working for a city, you're gonna get a pension or something in the end, but you are significantly paid less, I think, than in the private sector, so.
The difference is market adjustment is our best attempt to keep competitive with that. So it adjusts the whole range. What merit does is allow a person, if they're not at the top of the range, it allows them to move within that range up to
Move up
up
some.
to 3%. So I mean, there are 2 things in how this works.
And I'll use myself now, since I've been in the private sector for 12 years now. I had that range, and with Lockheed, it was a 3%, that we could move up every year. And that moved us up in the range, so that moved us up in the range. Now the range might have moved a little bit. And to combat inflation, the last 2 years, it's been 3.5. But that's it. And I have moved up in the range, over the now 12 years that I've, been in the private sector. And so, I hear what you're saying, and I think, and that's the perception, but it's a different perception I have. And it's
In talking to the other cities, we had a meeting and then we talked to people down at the, also. I think most cities are doing about 3.5% and just talking to what their plans are. As far as that goes, there are some cities that only do merit and their merit's higher than 3.5%. So I just wondered, how does that look? Is that just a really horrible idea?
No, it's the drawback of doing that is our attempt to keep our positions within market.
Okay.
Where you advertise for a position and you've got the top of your range here.
Yeah.
And other cities have the top of their range somewhere else.
It makes it hard.
It's hard to.
When they get merit, is that added to their salary permanently or is that just a one-time?
Exactly.
It is added
So it
permanently.
moves them
to
up
their-
permanently in their range,
It just increases their hourly rate.
Okay,
not just for that year, but.
and we don't tier, we do tier, we don't tier here. As far, we don't have a tiered system, okay. And the city that does do only merit has a tiered system, and so they automatically get to move up, I guess, and so that's why they don't do both. But
So, now that's an interesting thought. So on the merit, what if they were just one-time payments?
We used to have that and we took it out last year.
I don't know.
In addition to merit, we
guess
had the
Yeah, I guess it really
discretionary.
ended up being the
Didn't we?
same, but
Yeah, but that wasn't a one time, that was pretty much the same thing as the merit.
Oh, the
It was
same
just
thing.
increasing their rate.
yeah.
And there is a budget for bonuses, a small amount for each department,
on top of merit
which
and
is just a
COLA.
one-time thing.
Are they used very often? I mean, do most departments max out their budget for
No.
bonuses?
No,
No, I think we're only used to
I
handle.
think they're very discretionary on how they use bonuses.
So
But
the-
that's a one-time thing.
So then my question would be then on the merit increases, we using all of those? Is that pretty, is it, you know, is there a percentage of individuals, I mean, I don't know if you, that don't get 3%? I mean, you know, and is it a significant, because you have a hard time telling it, you know, and I'd be interested to see, you know, the employee that, what his merit has been the last few years, you know? And my guess is it's probably been there.
Mhm.
At what point in time, once you hit the max, you can't get the 3% merit, right? You can't get the merit. How many of employees have maxed out?
There's quite a few.
Quite a few, probably,
Because I think-
everyone in the power department, probably. I'll bet.
Not everyone, but there's quite a lot of the power department. I mean, every department has at least a handful of people that are maxed out, and they would not get any merit.
Because I was thinking, like,
40%, 50%?
to Perry's analogy, I mean, if, like, I was trying to figure that out, because I know that we budget for full merit, we budget for the 3%, right? But,
We budget for everyone that's eligible. So the people that are not gonna get it, we don't budget for them.
right, but,
We budget the full.
but like, I was trying to figure out what is 1%? And that's not gonna work. 78,000 times 2 isn't gonna tell me what 1% equals merit, because only half of those people are getting merit. Because I'm trying, I guess to Perry's point, like, if we were to budget for 2% merit,
I could tell you what that number is.
or look at like, what average percent have we increased over the last,
Now, we have a calculation where we can say if we budget for 2% merit, we can tell you what that is. what that
and I would
number is.
only want to do that if you had history showing that on average, for the last 2 years, we budgeted for 3%, but after after it's actually happened, it's only been 2%. Then it'd be like, okay, then we could really budget for 2,
Yeah, very.
and would it lower this?
Employee by employee.
I know, and I'm not saying like we'd hold them to that, but it might might make more sense to budget for what we've had a track record of doing.
I would guess it'd be high 80% to get,
Full,
And I'm at.
high 80?
well,
We
but.
get full merit through 3%.
Oh, okay,
That's, and
okay.
I would think it's at least that, because it's harder not to.
Yeah.
But I would have thought 90%.
Do we have a step system? I'm at step, not tier.
Well,
Yeah,
for
we do.
historical context,
Right,
like,
okay.
we used to have a step,
Should we?
right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Going back, what,
Yeah.
4 or 5 years ago or something?
Yeah, 5 years ago. when
Let
we
me
changed
change
it.
that.
And the average step increase was, I want to say, 4.5%. So,
It was a great step system. 12 steps, the first 9 were 4.5%, and 9 through 12 were 3%.
okay. So just kind of in context of what we used to have, the merit is actually a little bit less in terms of how fast people move through their range than what we had with the
Okay.
step system.
Okay. Which is why we changed it.
Right.
I remember. Okay.
And this just hits with me, and I know I brought it the last couple of years we've been doing this, because we're talking $1 million a year. you know, with this is, and especially with health insurance as well, you know, which we haven't seen the increase, but this year we're, you know,
Bigger.
and I have a question when we get to that as well, but, okay.
But before we move on from this.
No, I don't want to move on. I don't know what the right answer is. It just seems like we're doing more than I feel we should because it's more than most.
I'm trying to remember, I know we had looked at what other cities are doing, obviously look at the market every year and see where we fall and what we need to do to keep in sync with other cities. With the merit, I thought I recalled that most cities were doing something comparable,
I
but
think typically merit is 3 to 4%.
I think mosquito abatement, he does a lot of research when he does it. They did a 2% COLA and I think their merit was 3%, so you could get a total of 5. That's what mosquito abatement did, I believe. But
We're not too far off from
and that's where, I mean, he does a lot of research when he does it.
And it seems to me that we just keep, and it was part of a conversation I had down at, in St. George, we kill each other because as cities, we're competing for each other's resources, the same, you know, and so we keep driving each other up. And we're killing each other. And on the backs of our residents. And I don't,
government's becoming more and more expensive.
yeah, look, I hate to tell you what I paid in taxes this year.
Every house is gonna pay $120 mortgage for sewer. They don't have
Yeah,
a choice.
yeah.
That's one that's already gonna hit. Nothing we can do about that, you know, and it's just everything compounds. And all I keep hearing, you know, I don't know, how many raises you had in the last year?
I've had decreases.
Okay, see, and that's what I keep hearing is people are not getting raises.
But also,
But I also understand.
but I also
I
make
want to keep up our
way more money.
employees with with cost of living. There's discretionary, that's department. We just need to make sure we're being fair on the cost of living.
So are we getting some head nods on the
Well, I think that's what
3.5% or
that's what it's trying to do,
what? Oh, that's it.
is stay up with the cost of living.
And Mike, if your merit is discretionary, but it seems to be just
Yeah.
Automatic.
it's an automatic.
Yeah, it shouldn't be.
And,
The departments go through the evaluation process.
sure.
I don't think it's automatic, but I do think they're generous. I mean,
It would be interesting to know how many people.
they put ranges in there. It's not like every single person gets 3, some will get 2, some will get.
I think my department, I think I have star performers, and I want to give them all 3%.
Yeah.
I do.
But you can see that, I mean, if you reduce it from every 0.5%, you reduce that, that's about the savings you'll get. If you reduce the merit, it wouldn't be exactly that, but similar.
Yeah.
So
how are we looking on the employees that are down, that are still below our,
I thought we budgeted to bring all those up this
We
year.
budgeted to get everyone up to that 5, like similar to last year, and that was only like a $40,000.
It wasn't very much. We did a lot last year.
And a lot of that was for like city engineer, I think was looking at one, because that was the most.
Abby has a point she wants to bring up.
Oh, sorry, I was gonna cut in, but I don't like to be rude. So this is 78,000 just by reducing it by 0.5%. And I mean, as I've talked to the department heads, I know we've said we're not gonna hire any more people, but there are some positions that 78,000 would fund. And I mean, I know it's not popular, but I feel like we're doing a disservice to our residents by understaffing some of these positions. I know I've talked to Jason about how some positions can be covered by like part-time fixes, like third-year law students for the legal department, or maybe having the fire marshal service contract out to another city. But I really feel like the police department and there's some flux in community development, so I kind of want to see where that lands. But like the police department and public works and parks have all asked for people the last 3 years and possibly, longer with the police department. And I'd be interested to see if any of us are interested in looking at hiring for some of those positions, because I mean, we've said they're in need, but I really think they're like we need this bad now. for some of these positions. So that's kind of what I was thinking. I know it's kind of out of left field because we said, no, we're not gonna do that, but I think I'd be remiss if I didn't say that I think
No,
it needs to be done. And
it's a
if
great
not,
option.
that we need to put something on paper or something saying we're gonna start addressing it.
It's a great option if you say, how many positions, so what do you need? And so what do you, and the overall budgets would stay the same, but if you went from, say, a 7% overall, to a 5% overall, there's $300,000.
Yeah, and I think
And-
that would
and
go a
that's-
long way.
And that's maybe 3 positions or
Yeah.
something.
And then that would reduce the
Ish,
workload,
ish.
which I think is why a lot of people are like, well, we want
It's an
more pay
option.
because we're doing so much more work. But I think if we can get some of these people in, I mean, like Mike says, the gift that keeps on giving, but so is a raise
Well,
like
Abby,
this.
to your point, with parks reducing 22,500 for contract services for restroom cleaning, and I know, that's gonna put more of a strain on the staff to keep the restrooms clean. And so
I'm pretty sure if you polled staff, they would say, wait, you're gonna drop our,
Yeah,
or
yeah.
you're gonna give us less
I'm
money
happy
so
to
you
do
can
more.
hire?
Yeah.
More people,
I
they
think
probably.
I think they'd just be willing to say, yeah, we'll work more, so
We'll work-
don't hurt us.
work-
I mean, I know it's a hard pill to swallow, but I think
Right.
in the long run, it's the growth that we need. Like I was talking to Chief Oberg and he was saying, I was like, well, it's the gift that keeps on giving. And he was like, yeah, but so is adding 5,000 residents. That's the gift that keeps on giving the city work. Like the police aren't getting less work. The more houses we build, the more people we bring into the city, the more traffic we have, the more work they're doing. But we haven't hired anyone in at least 3 years, possibly longer. Then they're sending young officers out without a supervisor sometimes. I think that's
Well, and they
a
can't even
dangerous
staff the
situation.
positions that they have open, so.
I think, yeah.
I would like to have the chief come in sometime and just hear about everything they do and deal with, because I hear that, but I'm like, this is Kaysville, relatively peaceful community.
Do it right along. It would be,
And
if
I
you
need
have
to,
time, yeah, do, because I'm shocked about as far as how much stuff happens here. I didn't know either.
An increase in domestic violence cases, I know a lot of it is.
And
is
Nick could
that.
also tell
is it
you.
okay?
Uh-huh.
It would just be nice to have a better understanding.
Yeah, for
Yeah,
sure. I was
'Cause we
thinking
give
it was
the
gonna be
police-
boring and there's a lot of stuff.
But anyway, that was my pitch for looking into, or at least holding ourselves accountable next year if we're not gonna do it this year, to fill some of those gaps.
Yeah, I'd love to explore some of those options, part-time and creative things like what Nick came up with a third-year law student. And, if we can get Fruit Heights to come back on fire and maybe even police, that's a lot of revenue that we could use towards helping to staff those departments. It's really tough on this because I think you're absolutely right. We could use some of that money and say, hey, let's just do like a 3% increase and that saves us, $150,000 or what, which would fund at least one good position. On the other hand, it's like a double-edged sword too, I feel like, because, if we don't keep pace with the other cities on the market, and that's what drives that, of course, then we start to feel like, all right, we got to catch up eventually, or, it's becoming so competitive to attract and retain staff. So there's that side of it as well. And just thinking about, just what some of the recent experiences, with losing Jessica Busk in police, she was just incredibly gifted at getting a lot done. I mean, she did the work of 2 people easily, just one of those people that could do that. And so just being able to keep people like that there's something to be said for keeping their salaries competitive and retaining those kind of people. So again, I'm not suggesting one way or the other is necessarily better, just something to think about.
And I think if we want to keep it the way we want, like if we want to leave it at this, then, I mean, I would be in favor of adding that additional amount just to what we have, because I feel like it's enough of a need. I mean, I know that's a hard sell.
Funding one position or funding?
Yeah, funding one position, maybe not from this amount, but just
adding
we've
to
talked
the
about
budget?
like adding it to the budget, yeah.
And which position would it be that you feel the most need to fund?
There's so many, but I
I'd
know
leave- I'd
fire,
leave
we've
that-
talked
I'd
about some
leave that up
things,
to
but
him.
Yeah, leave it up to you guys, but maybe
I was
police
just
seems
curious in your
pretty
conversation.
intense. But I mean, water has, I mean, the EPA's got all these new regulations that we have to start filling, and we've got like the 3-month project to survey every house that was built in the 1970s and make sure they don't have lead or copper in there, or steel or whatever it is, in their like juncture things. So it's a lot of work, and it's not going away.
Okay.
Those are kind of the two that always come to mind for me,
Can I
police and.
Can I speak to that
Water.
point too? Because like when you talk about the officer that left, that's leaving a big gap. Like for me, I don't ever hear from the department heads. Like when it comes to like real strong needs, like if there is an employee that's doing 2 jobs and they're looking somewhere else and they would stay based on if we hired someone. Like I have never been really told anything about that sort of stuff. When it comes to Parks and Rec, I have no idea how strained they are. And I hear like here and there, they're strained. But like, I want to hear from a director that says, look, this is very, very critical. Because I look at even the tax increase and the 300,000 and everything that we're cutting, to me, it's a joke. We need to raise it 3-fold, our taxes. And the last time we did an increase, we probably should have raised it, did a double increase. And I feel like we're cutting so much stuff, like the security information and management. I mean, Tammy, you were in a meeting hearing about cybersecurity, and I look at that and I'm like, is that going to put our city at a huge risk for like snow plowing, sidewalk maintenance? We have horrible sidewalks, we have horrible roads in our city. People look around and they're like, why is there potholes everywhere? And we're cutting all this stuff, and it's crazy to me. And I'm just like, I don't know what we need to do, but I feel like we need to raise taxes definitely more than 300,000. And we need a more clear understanding. And this has been great this year versus previous years going through the budget. This is so much better than it was when I first got on and started. But I still feel like there's so many missing pieces, and I'm having a hard time knowing where to place judgment at this point. Just speaking plainly. So.
And I'm happy to let the department heads come and speak, on their own behalf, kind of just give you sort of in fact, I mean, maybe, I feel like we could take some time over this coming several months, see how things work out with, for example, Nick's situation with this attorney. This could be the answer, at least for, a while, and if that works. And there's some other creative solutions that may come into play, and I'm excited to see if that works. And again, we can bring in revenue from other agencies like, cities like Fruit Heights. That could really be a real help. But as the department heads come in and do their annual reports to the city council, they could certainly kind of speak on some of these things like you're talking about. In fact, I know police and public works are both coming in the next month to give their annual reports to the council. So we can have them kind of touch on some of those things to just give you a better understanding of kind of what the workload is. Maybe if it helps compare, how many FTEs we have in our police department compared to other cities, per capita or something like that, if that helps put things into context. I mean, we can look at those things. And it's always hard to compare apples to apples, but.
I think it would be really helpful too, to just not identify positions by name, but just, hey, I've got 5 guys who mow 12 parks, or, and these are the hours, this is how much time it takes, just to give us a little bit of a scope. Because like Nate said, we hear, well, we're busy doing this and now we have to clean the bathrooms on top of it. Well, what does that actually mean?
Yeah.
In our minds, we're thinking, okay, you're working the parks, you go around, you spray stuff. I mean, we don't really know. We really, truly don't know what the jobs entail. And I know I haven't taken time to look at all the job descriptions to see, okay, this is what this. So if they could just generally give us a little more detail in terms of, like, I've got 12 guys and this is what they do. This is how many hours approximately they spend. And 2 of these guys are doing the job of two other people, or whatever it is that they're doing.
Too.
Yeah, and just and this is how much we have to pay in overtime, per department, because we don't have full time. Those kinds of stories, so that it dumbs it down for us enough to make it simple, so that we can wrap our head around it. Because it's true, we keep kicking this can down the road. We also don't want to grow government. We all believe in conservatism, and we believe in efficiency, and so don't want to give people the wrong impression that we just want to grow this to be this big empire. But in Kaysville, we have a standard of living that people expect. And we've been able to provide them, and the expectation is very high. I mean, think about the outcry that we've heard from our community about other things. There's an expectation there to be taken care of. And well, believe me, I feel like I pay my fair share in power and property tax, but I also like living here, and I know that there's a price to that, so.
Yeah, and to your point too, I hear from my neighbors, I'm like, they drive through Kaysville, we're seeing more and more graffiti, there's potholes everywhere. Nothing is, sidewalks are bad, at least in my area. And I don't understand why we can't like have better planning or get caught up or.
At some point in time, I think it would be good for us to say, okay, this is the expectation. I know we're recommending like a 5%. If people can count on something, they can kind of plan for it a little bit better. Not that you say no matter what, even if we don't need this X% raise, we're gonna do it. Obviously, we have to be able to justify it, but truth in taxation, in my opinion, needs to happen every year, regardless of whether or not we hold the rate or we increase it. Because it sets that expectation that we know things are costing more. We all know that. We see it every day. We experience it at the store. Telling people, oh no, we're just gonna do this and we're gonna make it all better, I don't think is as transparent as we all are dedicated to being, because it ignores the fact that we're still using money. Things still cost money. We're just trying not to charge you, but then it has future problems. It creates future projects that are potential liabilities. So I'm not advocating for a huge increases, you guys. Common sense.
I think what Abby's point in saying, council,
Comment whatever you want.
Abby makes a good point about like what the difference in percentage of COLA is costing versus being able to employ employees. And I think that if you look at 10 years ago or 5 years ago, COLA was like what, 1% or 1.5%, something like that.
Until a year ago, we were trending, 2.1%.
2%. So if it were 2% instead of this, then all of a sudden we would be able to listen to, oh yeah, let's hire some employees. And I hope that this will normalize. And then, so I don't think that necessarily you're kicking the can down the road with like the employees, because I think last year Social Security, or people with Social Security got a 3.2% COLA, like 3.2, and they're projecting that next year it's gonna be 2.6.
I think Social Security was actually higher last year.
Oh, okay, well, maybe it's this year then. I was just, when I was reading about it, it was like 2024, they're guessing is gonna be 3.2,
We
2025.
haven't seen anything like what we've seen the last 2 years.
So
COLA.
chances are it's gonna
I
drop.
mean, the feds are trying to keep it under 2%.
Yeah, that was Biden's most recent thing, right? I wanna see the federal government only get 2% COLA this year.
Well, the Federal Reserve is trying to keep inflation at 2%.
Okay, so I guess what I'm trying to say is like, I don't think that we necessarily need to, I don't think it's gonna be a problem every year. I think that it's more of a problem this year. But what we need to figure out right now, which is, we need to get back to this stupid page 11. What are we thinking as far as?
Nothing is cast in stone. All we're trying to do is say, here's some.
Okay, then should we move on?
Here's some ideas, how to cover the gap, and we presented those to you. And it still leaves about a $300,000 gap, and we suggest one way to cover that is through a tax increase.
Okay.
And we're trying to show you what impact that would have. It's about, and again, we're just basing on the 23 certified tax rate value. We don't have the new tax rate value yet.
No, that's fine.
So if that goes up quite a bit, it would be less than that.
It shouldn't.
So, I mean, that's, for an average value home of $650,000, that would be the impact.
And
Sweet.
And before we move off this topic too, I just feel strongly too that we do want to look at creative ways of finding ways to staff up. But if those aren't successful, I really think that, yeah, we will have to look at if the tax increase is needed. Some of these departments really do need some additional staff. So we will keep a really close eye on this and, maybe come back in the future with.
I do have one question that kind of throws a lot into this for me. So we've said we're not hiring any additional staff, correct? I mean, so far. But yet the police department has gone up 555,000 from last year and the power department's gone up 246,000 from last year. Explain to me how, why?
That's the budget amount, that's the market adjustment plus the.
That's the 3.5% and the merit 3%.
Why is that not, I mean, is it just, doesn't really affect the other departments? I don't see that anywhere even close to that.
They have more staff.
Like police department, I think the slide we showed last week, when you look at that, showed that the police department was about 600,000 of that.
You're talking this, Mike, with personnel expenditure?
Yeah, well, since it has a lot to do with why
Yeah,
we're
right
short,
there, yeah.
then you look at the personnel
So
expenditure,
that-
just those two
They
right
just
there.
they just have more employees in their department, so the dollar number's bigger. But the combination of all that is because of it's pay and benefits, so it includes the health care cost increase. And it also includes that 3.5%. And it includes merit. And so that 1.1 million at the very bottom, that's the total general fund increase.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
I think it's bigger because they have more employees and it's a bigger dollar number to them, but that's why it's going up. Does that make sense?
Yes, I mean, I tried to see I'm trying to use an example. I think there's 20 full-time employees in the fire department.
22 and
523.
Public Works is what, how many?
18 or so.
18 or so, and I just looked at the Public Works and it only went up 34,000.
Well, theirs is mostly in enterprise funds. This is general fund.
Oh,
Most of their
okay,
salaries
all
are
right.
water,
Oh,
That
okay.
answers the water.
sewer, so it's spread out over different funds.
In fact, that 78,000 is just the general fund savings.
Hey, while we're on this page, like a jerk this meeting, but, I don't like putting my foot down on things, but I'm gonna say that I will not be able to feel like I can approve any budget that includes a raise for council. And it's not a reflection of me thinking that you don't work hard. I know everyone works hard, but when we're having this conversation every year of how are we gonna pay for this stuff, I can't justify having any more for me, so. That's my 2 cents on that.
I disagree.
I would second that. Hers, not you.
Yeah, no, that's.
Yeah, it's fixed.
I think it's important to say too, well, sorry, go ahead.
No, you finished.
Oh. I don't know who I said this to earlier today, but if I don't know when the last time we did a council raise was, it was a few years, 4 or 5 years ago, maybe. And if we did that to staff, there'd be a mutiny. I mean, you guys obviously work very hard and get peanuts for the time that you put in. So, I mean, for what that's worth, I appreciate that too, but I know that's your decision.
We heard one city that, and Mayor, I don't remember, I think you were the one who told us to, they've just put it in, if it's whatever the COLA increase is
Yes.
for the city, that goes in. That's easier to justify, because then it's just that, it's not very much, because you're talking
Right,
3 or 4% on nothing that's still nothing, but still,
Right.
but it's,
Right, a lot of cities that I was talking to have done that, so.
it paid for my gas.
I think at a bare minimum, our city should do that. And so you say it's been 5 years roughly. What year would have that been? 2019?
I know it's the year that Michelle Barber
I think it was
was on council,
2018.
and she said, make it effective.
20?
Yeah, it was 2018, it was right before.
I think it's crazy to not have any increases since 2018. And personally, I take a lot of personal time. I take time away from my day job. I expend a lot of energy meeting with folks, getting phone calls, as all of us do. And I think for future councils, when we're long gone, when other people look at running for office, how much money they have to expend to run for office, what they have to deal with, I think it really limits the pool of quality people in the future to not have any adjustments since 2018. And if we continue with this approach and kick that can down the road, then we're going to have a future council that is probably wholly unqualified and with a very limited pool of people that would want to subject themselves to this type of work. And so I think it is absolutely appropriate to discuss a council increase, but a moderate increase, an increase that reflects what we do. Because no matter what, we're going to always put in more time than what we get back in monetary funds. But I do think it's absolutely important, and that goes along with what I was saying before. We are pushing off so many things in the city, and it's starting to get, the last 3 years, it's starting to get hard to know how to handle this budget because we're dealing with stuff we pushed off last year, and it's going to be even worse next year. And then we're going to blindside all these residents, and they're going to be really upset. And so I just think we have to talk about all these things and take into consideration the long-term aspect, not just us, but future councils. So.
I'm definitely ready for a raise. Been given one for 6 years. I'm ready for one.
And I think the two, in my opinion, the two, like the whole COLA thing, it's potatoes, tomatoes, in my opinion, like the idea of just raising, saying, oh, 3% of $12,000. Yeah, I mean, it's like, you maybe don't do it every year, but you do have to look at it and say like, look, minimum wage in just the last 5 years has gone up and kids are making $16 an hour and in and out. And also for those of us that have been on council for 5 years, like the amount of meetings that we've been holding, which are great, that's perfect. But just in the budget, I think we had one budget retreat our first year on city council. And it was on a Saturday and it was 4 hours and that was the only one we had. I love this way of doing things, but I think like, I look at the mayor's always here. Like I think she's extremely underpaid. Like I was gonna suggest that it be 16,000 annually for the city council and 28,000 for the mayor. Those were my numbers.
John, can I interject too? When we talk about market-wide adjustments and the merit, like we take care of our employees, we want to take care of all the employees, but we're in that mix too. And I would support bringing that down a little bit to put more money in to beef up the council a little bit to get us all on a level playing field. Next year, adjust.
But I get why maybe you guys wouldn't want to support it, and that's fine,
I think it's been a good discussion. I like your guys' viewpoint.
I guess you don't get into these for the money. I mean, I realize for the $10,000 a year, that's not money. I mean, and so.
But we would also not do this for free. Absolutely, I would not subject myself to everything for free.
The number we suggested is, we looked at the market out there, we saw what other cities were paying, and we think what we suggested is appropriate and probably a little bit on the low end.
I think it's on the low end a little bit, in my opinion. I think it's on the low end, but.
What is that? What's the low end, Dean? What would 12,000?
It wasn't 12%, and it was gonna be, we get 96 now, and it'd be 12.5, right? And the mayor, I don't know where the mayor was, but total it added up to like 22,500, our increase and the mayor's for all of it.
I agree with you, John. I think we should go on the high end.
Yeah, I think it should be 16 and 28, but I'm making those, I mean, I'm not making them up. I'm just looking at like from the mayor's standpoint, if I were to do what she's doing and I wasn't getting $2,500 a month, I'd be like, holy cow, this is. And to Perry, to your point, when you say, a lot of people would do it for free, I think in years past, you do end up with people on city council that maybe are comfortable and don't need, that little bit of extra money versus maybe some people who run because they think, look, this could be a little bit of, this is a side gig that I want to do. And I'm,
That's fair.
helping. So, I mean, they pay congressmen, they pay judges, they pay everybody.
I will say, I'm gonna use a church example, but, in church leadership positions and you go, okay, I'm not gonna turn to my receipts. And my friend who was our bishop at the time, he said, you need to, because future people who end up in that calling, that position, might not have the same ability to not turn in the receipts. We need to see what the real cost is for doing that. And so I don't think I need an extraordinary amount of money for sure. Of course, we do it because we love it, but there is a cost to it. We pay a lot in gas, we pay a lot in, I mean, there's just a lot of time that everyone puts in, and I'm
It's a
so
cost to our
grateful
families too.
that you guys do, and you're
That's the
taking
biggest
time.
cost.
I mean, it's this meeting started at 4:00. People are taking time off work, me included, honestly, but that's okay. You know, we all sign up to do it, and I get that. But for future people to have the ability to do it, not everyone has the flexibility to do that for free.
Yeah.
So, you know, I see both arguments there for sure. And we don't have to make a decision today about it, so.
Well, but I'm glad you brought that up.
Yeah, good point.
Yeah, sorry, I just want to bring it up.
Yeah.
Thanks for listening.
Okay, the next slide is probably the last one for us. We've got a
Let's skip ahead.
property tax comparison.
We're 13. Oh, you skipped.
I just couldn't figure out why that number was so
What page are we
high, like
on?
nobody was
13.
doing it.
Dean, I know you're gonna explain this, but this is what they did last year?
This is the current,
Oh, the current rate.
That's the current rates.
and it does include all services, for example, Bountiful, now South Davis area recreation. So if we provide recreation, we tried to,
Or a fire district.
or a fire district, we made it comparable. So this is, their actual tax rate may not be that, but once you add the districts onto that, comparing apples to apples, this is what.
So these aren't the 24 rates, so we don't know what, we don't have the ability to,
This is
we're a year behind, right?
This is the current rate. So if you were, everyone is going to adjust their rates as part of their budget cycle.
Okay, I guess I thought we were 2024 now.
But within this, if we raise it by the
We
amount,
don't have assessed
where would you
values yet
land?
to set those rates.
Got it, thank you, sorry.
Why was Layton so low?
You said that.
Do they run
have
at
a ton
smaller?
of
They have a
sales tax.
club, they
Their
have
sales tax is
Walmart,
through
they have- I mean, they just have so many.
They've got Lowe's
We have-
and Home Depot.
And Sam's Club.
We know that Farmington,
And
their
Walmart.
budget has proposed a
Multiple
15%.
Bunch of
increase.
business.
That's the real.
You said, did you say Farmington has proposed a 15%, they're proposing right now, at their council level, 15% for this coming
They
year?
already did their tax increase.
How did they
They couldn't, they don't have assessed values yet.
say?
I thought they did it last year.
I
It's
think
their
they-
first tax increase. They
They
did
did
it last year.
I think
There
they're
is a
suggesting
last
another
year.
one.
That would be helpful to know what you're hearing from
I
other cities.
Yeah, I agree.
Potential increases.
What is it? Anderson, yes. And you go, why? You've got so much.
$20 million difference.
I know, it's-
But even within this range, Dean, if we raise it by the 300,000, your proposed amount, does that leave us in kind of the same area in the pack, or does it move us?
This would put us to 1648, so you can kind of compare, but then you got, you know,
We got to understand the others are
these will
gonna adjust.
adjust too, so.
Yeah.
It probably doesn't move the needle on anything, it might,
We're not gonna shoot up to third on the list. or
no, you could even drop down, depending,
It does include district.
Does include
So for example,
Yeah, because with that 15%, Farmington's gonna leapfrog us even if we did this right.
South Davis
Yeah.
District. So we
Probably not gonna move the needle.
So that wasn't there.
May I ask why Clearfield Sunset's so high?
Low assessed values, just, I think,
Yeah.
right?
Oh,
Probably,
okay.
They've got a s-
They
smaller
have
tax
a
base.
small, okay.
Their population is lower than ours, right?
Not the same.
Clearfield's about the same as ours.
Hey, Dean, have you heard
Sunset's
of
much
other cities, what
like
they're
8,000
planning on doing?
The only one I know about is Farmington, but it's still early. We're going to a meeting, it's not till May 29th, right?
yes, yeah.
The taxing meeting for the county.
That'd be interesting to know.
So we won't know until
I'm
end of
sure
May.
all the cities are having similar discussions right now, so they'll probably come through the next few weeks, month or so.
So $300,000, so that's what we're saying. That's still that's a 5%.
That's, yeah, 5.5.
5.5%.
It's better than 2.2 million.
With the,
Yes, it is.
with
But
the
that's
current-
crazy, 300,000.
It just seems, that seems high for such a small amount.
Yes, I agree, 100% agree.
Our property tax is not that much.
Hmm?
When you look at our budget, our property tax revenue is not that
Yeah,
much. We get so much in fee and lieu, we get
you're right.
enterprise funds,
Yeah.
actual.
All the other stuff
taxes
we're really getting
vary.
stuff money in for. This is
Power,
the one way we have to be able to create revenue.
It's one of the few
Yeah.
things we have.
I'll say, aside from everything that we are doing as a city to try to generate new business activity, because, you know, for people, whoever might be listening, we are doing as much as we can on that side as well. Not just looking at this thinking, oh, there's a pot of gold, let's just raise taxes. We're trying really hard
I bring
to
in
attract some
tunnel
great
car
businesses.
wash.
Great businesses and create more of a regional environment here in Kaysville and bring in some sales tax. And so, and our community's been supportive of these things that we're trying to do. So we are trying to help ourselves also.
To that point, Tammy, I got pickup at our local Chinese restaurant. Is
Buddha Belly.
Buddha Belly. And the owner, I talked to him a little bit and he's like, what do you do for work? And I told him I was on the city council. And he said a few years ago, the city highlighted their business. It was highlighting multiple businesses. He said business actually increased quite a bit
Oh, really?
when we did that.
Okay.
And he asked if there's any way the city could do that.
Get diners and
Not
drive-ins.
only for
and
him, but for others.
Yeah.
Because I think they're probably hurting as well, and it's always kind of quiet. It's good food.
I'm gonna
And
write that down. So we're gonna start doing some videos. Anyway, yeah, we'll talk about that.
Put it in the
Thanks, Nate.
newsletters too.
it's good food, it's quality.
Okay, the rest of the information is just, we're not gonna go through every page, just information you can take home, look at, if you have questions, let us know. I just think where we are is, what are our next steps? What more do you need from us before we adopt the tentative budget?
balance.
Oh,
So how much time do we have between now and the May 16th approximately? Okay.
this, this current 300 is not, adding any employees.
Yeah, I'd like to maybe see what you guys, if you guys think there is one employee out of the ones we talked about, that could be hired and what that would add. If, next time we're talking about it.
Any question for Jason?
I don't know.
As
I
he
mean-
visits with departments?
Just information to have if we wanted to do anything.
Is there any way as well to have the directors, like everything that they're proposing on cutting, to do a little write-up of why they're proposing it and pro and con? Just something to give us a little more context. Like with the security systems.
Because Jason told us to.
Well, but I want to know the cons though, because we have a duty to keep a city functioning well.
Yeah, for example, the one we pointed out was on parks. Cole has told us that it's reducing fertilizer.
That's a lot of, Park seems to be taking the biggest hit. Across the.
So just a quick summation maybe from you guys that helps me do a little bit of my decision making. We get a financial auditor in here, tells us that the city is doing financially very well. We have our reserves up to 35% of our budget like it says we can. We got dinged on it the year before because it was 25%. The state changed the law and said you could go to 35%. We have all that in reserve. We are doing, according to our financial audit, very, very, very well, and the city's operating very well. How it sounds so dire today.
Well, I mean, it's our job to keep you operating well. And what we're suggesting is that, you start using fund balance year after year at $800,000 level, that eats into your fund balance pretty quick. And, and then when you have a big project come up like a gymnasium project where you want to allocate $1 million, there's less opportunity to do some things. You lose some interest earnings by reducing your fund balance, but there's some trade-offs.
And that fund balance was built up over years and years, and costs have increased dramatically just in the last few years. And so you can definitely dip into it, and we are dipping into it quite a bit. I think that's.
I mean, I think, for an example, our policy on the power companies, we try to have 180 days of operating. I mean, UAMP says you should be 60 to 90 days. We use, I think at extreme is at 120, but we use 180, I believe. So I'm just asking, it sounds like we're doing so financially well when it's done outside independently, but when it comes in here, it just sounds like dire.
And we're trying to keep you that way. Keep you financially solid.
Well, and I would almost have to, argue that what you've proposed today, I would never say dire. I mean, a $300,000 tax increase. Last year, it was 750, 700 to 800,000. And it ended up being less, but that's what we went at, so this is less than half of last year.
But we are cutting salt, we're cutting fertilizer.
Oh, no, but it's a
sidewalk maintenance.
But it's
10,000.
But it's in here, here's what we're cutting, and they've made the hard decisions. And so I don't know that I think on the financial side is dire. My question goes back almost to your point is, have we cut too much? And I don't have an answer. That's my question. And so.
And I guess, I want to know, are we still going to be at the end of the year, if we dip in, are we still going to be between 35 and 25% in reserve funds?
That's a real great question.
Yeah.
What
If we're
percentage?
dipping down to 15% in reserve funds, that's not where the city wants to be.
Yeah.
But if we're getting down to, if we're going from the 35 down to 30%, that's okay. That's actually okay.
But if we do that
in that case,
you go down pretty quick.
No, but see, in that case, if you're going from 35 to 30, and I don't know if you can answer what you think that will be, then why aren't we taking that additional 300,000 out? I mean, that's your question then, because.
Well, if your fund balance is $7 million general fund, and you drop down 10%, that's $700,000, and we're suggesting you use $800,000 for fund balance. That's taking it from 35 to 25 with that decision.
25%. I have a hard time thinking that our residents would not be okay with us having a healthy rainy day fund. I mean, that's what we all want to do with our own finances, is have a good savings.
Yeah, provided there isn't any additional fund balance in 24. And we don't know that yet.
And see, that's what I asked you earlier. I said, can you tell me what the fund balance will be for
I don't think
2025?
I don't think it's gonna be the 300,000 we got last year.
And that's what we added to the fund balance last year.
I know we held off on buying one of the transformers for the power company, so that should take that fund balance
That's a
another.
different issue. That's power
I know
enterprise,
that's
not
power.
general fund.
That's not general fund, but it is all part of the dire picture of Kaysville City's budgets. I try to look at the big picture. I try to look at the big picture, not.
We're trying to give you
Okay.
enough information where you can make a good decision.
Mike, to that point too, though, in terms of tax increases, every single item I'm assuming that we're cutting, we have to pay for next year, the year after, because I'm assuming if it's on this list, it's extremely important. If it's not extremely important, it shouldn't be on this list. It's on the directors. But I agree with you, but I also agree that we probably need to do a tax increase or truth in taxation. Unless there's a lot I'm missing. I don't know. It's just because we have to pay for this either now, next year, or the year after.
Every house is already getting at least $120 a year right now, regardless of what we do.
I mean,
it's already.
Yeah.
Truth in
My
taxation
water's gone up, power.
will take place in August. By the end of June 30th, we'll have a pretty good idea what fund balance did.
But will that force us to do a bigger tax increase next year, though?
I don't know. I don't know what the sales revenue is
Because
gonna
we
be. I don't
obviously
know what the
have to pay
carryover
for
is
this
gonna be. I
amount.
don't know
Or
what
what
the
COLA's gonna
fund
be.
balance is gonna be. I don't know what any of that is.
I appreciate what you did, and I appreciate
Yeah, I do. I
the
mean, you gotta
adjustments
have
you made.
gotta have the numbers. Thank you.
I kind of feel a little bit like you're car salesman though, because like you come in, you're like, oh, I can't discount, it's 50,000. You aim it high and then you cut down, make us feel really good, because it starts at
Like, I
2 and
think, I
drops
think
down
you
to.
see where the cuts were, I mean.
I'm just teasing.
I
I think
No,
it's
they didn't come from
great.
us, they came from the departments.
It's a great way to do it. Like, it's a smart way to do it.
And this is the best slide you did.
Which way?
That's a good one.
Yeah.
But I do feel like we need to, the questions you asked, like what the next approach is, I don't think, at least for me, there's nothing more. It's gonna all come down to like us deciding what we wanna do with COLA and how we wanna pay for that 300, and if that 300 doesn't come into play because of the fund balance, that's what we have to decide right now. Is that how everybody else feels, or is there something else that?
So you're saying we need to decide between 3.5% and 4%?
No, I'm just saying like it seems to me that after after this meeting, that the
That's
true
really-
question for the council is, what are you gonna do for COLA? And what are you gonna do for, to make up the delta for the 3?
See, my recommendation on COLA would be 3% and a 2% merit. That should,
I don't think you
that's,
can change merit, though. I think
Why
that's
couldn't you?
part of our pay plan. It's baked in there.
Each year you can determine what merit increase you're going to allow.
Remind us, what did we do last year? I'm
that's,
sorry, I forgot.
that's about $250,000.
About the same, 3 and.
Well, because changing the merit from 3 to 2, changing the merit from 3 to 2, it only affects 50%.
I know, that brings it into it. That's what, I took that into consideration.
Okay.
Glad you guys are letting me do the math.
It's math in public, so, you know.
In public.
But I go back to things like the Parks and Rec at the playground. Should that be coming out of general fund, or should it go in, should we not? I mean, you know,
Fund balance,
yeah, fund balance or, and there are a couple other things. As I want to go back and look and say, and circle, and then come in with some questions.
And the question on the parks for me would be, how many total parks do we have, and what's the next park that needs to be remodeled? Because if we've got a couple years to save back up for another, then we could, potentially do fund balance. I get that.
And then is that the way you want to do it
And is
going
that
forward?
right? Or is that a really bad idea? Because next year we have 2 parks that need equipment replaced. I don't know what the
That's good.
rotation
We
is.
have that schedule.
And Mayor, what I've been hoping is that we could stay within a balanced budget for the next couple of years until the gymnasium came up over at the junior high, because at that point I figured we have to bond.
Yeah, for sure.
And so I hate to miss that opportunity, and I think you have a chance of, if you keep raising your taxes every year and then you want to go for a bond, especially if you want a general obligation bond that goes to the ballot, you'll lose it. That's what I worry about. I really was hoping that we could stay within a balanced budget for a few years and say, hey, we've not raised taxes, we stayed within a balanced budget. We have an opportunity to partner in a gym, which is going to require a funding source, which is going to require us to do a bond, and it's going to cause a tax increase. That's what I was hoping we could do, looking at that at the long 5-year.
Isn't one of our bonds gonna be paid off and?
Mhm.
5 years, I think. Isn't it?
It's a sales tax revenue bond for Pioneer Park, and that's covered through impact fees.
Impact, okay.
There's the police station. When's it gonna?
It's
2031.
Well,
We're still about 7
when it's
years.
25, that's getting close. That's what I'm saying. It's getting close.
And the gymnasium, we think is when?
It's on the schedule for 2026 or
26,
2027.
27, I think.
Yeah.
Okay, so a couple of years.
Yeah.
So we don't have anything else dropping off the books. Is the police station the next major thing that drops off the books?
For bonding, we don't have a lot of bonds anyway, but this building and the police station drops off in 31, this one drops off in 34. This building.
Okay.
The sales tax will be finished with this next budget year.
Okay.
And that's impact fees.
It's still one less obligation.
Mhm.
Yeah, which is
Well, but
good.
then can we use those impact fees for something else?
For the impact for parks, the park impact fees, that be used for parks.
So could it be used to buy the equipment next year for the playground?
Yeah.
Okay.
That's a substantial amount, isn't
Yeah,
it?
that's a lot of money.
Well, no, I mean, how
I
much
mean,
is,
it was
how much are we
right.
paying monthly for that bond? Roughly.
For the Pioneer Park.
Yeah,
200 something thousand.
$208,000 a year.
a year, yeah.
Oh, that reduces it.
Fund about 3 parts of the playground equipment.
Yeah.
But again, keep in mind, impact fees have dropped because construction.
Yeah, I was gonna say, are we gonna keep having that much in impact fees?
That's gone up to what, $2,500 now? Double what?
That's next year for sure, 2025.
Is when it drops off. Pioneer Park drops off next year.
So do you need
2025.
any other information from us?
No, you just, over the next
Just-
couple of weeks, let us know if we don't have any further direction, we'll present the tentative budget.
Which is what we've seen? Okay.
And then again, you still have time to work on it after that.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Is the 16th the due date for the tentative budget, or what is the due date?
That's our internal due date.
It's the statute says the first meeting in May, but the state auditor said, if you do it anytime in May, you're okay.
So we'll do it in that council meeting.
So we always kind of shot for the second meeting
It'll
in
be
May.
the second.
Okay.
Thank you.
Are we scheduled to meet again before then?
Unless you want to.
So
We're meeting on the 2nd.
Yeah.
No, I mean,
Budget.
in like this.
Since you guys are so prepared, what would be the issue of not presenting it actually at the first meeting in May and allowing a longer public comment?
We're not presenting it the first.
I'm just saying, what,
You're saying could
Adopt
we?
the tentative budget, the first meeting in May.
the first meeting in May, adopt the tentative budget in the first meeting in May, and then we
Your
would
packet
have
has to go out
longer
This
for,
week,
Yes, on Friday.
this Friday. So we'd have 2 days.
oh,
Yeah. Okay. You're getting a lot of followers though, Mike. We could post it on your Facebook.
oh, I ain't getting it.
Make sure people know about it.
Definitely possible.
All right, thanks.
Okay, thanks, everybody.
Yeah, thank
Amy,
you.
thanks,
Thank
Lee.
you. Thanks, Dan.
Close your meeting.
Okay, meeting, all in favor of adjourning?
Aye.
I don't even know if we voted on that. Anyway, meeting's over.